Okay. We are live. I should say I am live. We're just waiting for Stephanie Robin to join. So I am just coming on live all by myself here to see if anyone has any questions about today's topic so that I can write them down and be sure to ask Stephanie. We're talking today about returning to work now that many of us are going back to work, and revisiting some of the safety recommendations for photographers and newborn photographers in particular. So if you are back at work, we'd love to hear from you what you have been doing to keep clients safe. If you're not yet back at work, we'd love to hear about what you plan to implement, or if you have any questions about what you should or what you should be implementing when you do go back to work, please comment below and I will be checking my phone for the comments. So we still have time. Stephanie will be joining us momentarily and hopefully all the technology works and we'll be able to hear her and she'll be able to hear me. Otherwise, we'll have to restart this. Okay, I'm just checking that this is working. Yes, we are. If you're just joining, we're waiting for our guest, Stephanie Robin, to join us. And we are talking about newborn safety considerations as we return to work in our businesses now that many of our communities are reopening. So if you have questions about anything regarding operating during COVID, please add your comments. We would love to address them, talk about them with you. Also, if you can't hear me, it would be great if you could just comment so that I can fix that before we start. We did have one question that we will address. We had some questions, and one of them was about types of masks that are recommended. So hopefully Stephanie will have some insight into, oh, I see she's there. So let me let her into the meeting. Just letting you know we're live, Stephanie.
Hi.
Oh, yes, I can hear you. Okay, let me change the view. And we only have 4 people joining us, so
no worries.
We're good.
That's the nice thing about these, because they save on Facebook and people can watch anytime they want.
Yes, yes. Oh, we have a few more people joining now. I'm going to just make sure I have it open on my phone so I can look at the comments and insert them. Shall we start?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Jessica Nip, and I am a lifestyle, newborn, and family photographer in Toronto, Canada. Thank you for joining me today as I catch up with Stephanie Robin on safety considerations when returning to work, specifically for newborn photographers, but also applicable to family photographers and other photographers who are part of this membership or in this group. So welcome, Stephanie. How are you today?
I'm good. I spent all day yesterday gardening, and I'm noticing now, I'm like, oh, I actually have some color.
Oh, it was hot yesterday, and I think we are in for a heat wave the next few days here in Toronto anyway. I assume you're pretty close, so
Yeah,
same with your area.
I think so.
Yes, it's been really, really hot. In case you missed the first interview with Stephanie way back in early May, we many of us were closed due to community shutdowns and lockdowns. So we were just having a chat about what we could possibly do once we all reopen to keep our clients and ourselves and families safe. And now I know for me in Toronto, now photographers are reopening. And I know many photographers in our country are, if not back to work, then are planning to get back to work very shortly. And I think this is a very good time to have this conversation.
Yes, I think so. It's timely anyway.
It's timely. We may need another check-in in a few weeks because things are constantly changing.
They are.
If we've learned anything from 2020, it's you can't really predict where you'll be and what you'll be doing, even just a week or two from now.
It's true.
Yes.
Very, very true.
For those of you just joining, I'm talking with Stephanie Robin, and if you're new to the group, Stephanie is one of the co-founders of APNPI, and she is also an award-winning photographer, a global educator for safety in newborn photography, and she's also a practicing registered physiotherapist. So this is in addition to her work as a newborn photographer, her work in the health field makes her a very passionate and knowledgeable speaker on this topic. So we're so glad to have you as a resource here. And I'm sure people are tired of listening to me talk because I've been on here for the past 10 minutes talking to myself. So I think they're ready to get to the meat of this interview.
Awesome.
All right, so let's get started. And I think one of the main questions we've been receiving is the masks and gloves, or just mask or gloves topic, and should we be wearing them during sessions? And what's your opinion? Obviously this is
Unequivocally, yes. But for lots of reasons, for liability reasons, and for protecting like health reasons. So honestly, I think that it's cumbersome. Trust me, I practice as a physiotherapist lifting a lot more than an 8-pound baby. I'm sometimes lifting like a 30-pound leg and mobilizing an entire lower half of a person, adult human. And it's hot, people. It is hot. It's hot. You start getting really sweaty. And so let's talk about that. And let's talk about ways that you can alleviate these problems for yourself. So for one, air circulation. It's going to be huge. If you can get a little clip-on fan that you can clip right to I've worked this way for years actually, just because I'm redheaded and genetically I don't think I do well in the heat. But get a little clip on fan and put it on your, if you have a setup and you have a stand at all with your setup, you can clip it there. You can clip it to a light stand. Be careful if it's a corded fan that you don't have the cord running somewhere where somebody may trip on it and it, could catch or make your light fall over, that sort of thing. So, you always want to be careful about cords in your environment, that you don't create tripping hazards with them, and you can tape them down or just ensure that it's off somewhere where people don't walk, or blocked off so that people don't walk near the cords. But certainly having a fan is a great option to keep yourself a little bit more cool and keep that airflow happening around you.
May I interrupt? You mentioned clip-on fan. So you mean like something you would just, I have not seen this. So like a little one?
It's got a little burp on right on the end. So, yeah, you can just clip it right to the stand, and you don't have to, it's not something that has its own stand that's taking up a lot of space. You can also grab off of Amazon. They have personal fans that you wear like a lanyard. So it's actually like, it has a little, cord that goes around your neck, and then the fan sits on your chest. I don't tend to love using that because a lot of the time, when I'm posing outside of a pandemic, currently I haven't returned to newborn posed work because I don't want to be that close to the babies. I don't feel safe to do so. And so, but in a normal everyday posing environment, I don't prefer the lanyard type because I do use my chest sometimes in posing with babies. I'm holding them, up in this area. So I don't want something that, also if I lean forward, I don't want something that can swing like a pendulum and cause any damage that way to hit the baby or anything else, frankly. So I like the clip-on fans. I believe I got mine just from like probably like a Walmart or something, like a superstore. But you can certainly check, Canadian Tire, if you're in Canada, may have them. Now's the perfect time of year to be looking for this type of thing because it's summer and fans are usually readily available. Otherwise, for people that prefer fans on a stand, the Dyson works really beautifully. You can use it for heat or for cool. And of course, they have models that are only for heat and only for cooling. But if you have the Dyson, there's one that they make that will do hot or cold air. So you can use that as well and just direct it at yourself. Wind onto the baby may result in the startle reflex. So you want to make sure that wherever you're directing that airflow, that it's not hitting the baby directly if you're posing or you're using a beanbag. So in some places, restrictions are much lighter and they're more into what we would term like a stage 3, I guess, in Canada, how we would term. We're in a stage 2 right now in where I live in Ontario. And so I'm not personally posing babies right now, but for those of you who are, I think you can within stage 2. I'm just not comfortable with it myself.
So I'm hearing with the fan, it's more for personal cooling and which is why you're recommending a small one so that it doesn't blow onto the baby or anyone else being photographed.
Yes, mine's honestly, it's about that big around, like the size of your face. I don't know.
Okay. And this is for those who overheat. Not everybody overheats.
Not everybody does,
Yep.
but if you are overheating, that's one way that you can try to manage this situation with mask wearing. Yes. Another is to control your humidity. So if your environment is really humid, you will sweat, physically sweat more. If your environment is a little bit more dry, so you've taken the water out of the air, then your sweat will more readily evaporate into the environment. So just check on that. It's the principles of like heating and cooling. So if you work, my husband's a refrigeration mechanic, so I kind of understand this just from him, but if you run air conditioning in your home, you'll notice the air gets fairly light feeling. And sometimes when you walk outside, it'll hit you just like boom, like a heavy heat. That's the humidity you're feeling. It's not just the heat. So if you're watching the news and you're seeing humidex, the humidex will make it feel a lot hotter than it actually is on a thermometer, just like a wind chill factor. So you want to be, cognizant of watching that humidex, and you can run a dehumidifier prior to your session to try to take the moisture out of the air in your studio space. If you don't really care about your bills, you can run air conditioning and then switch over to heating when the session happens. But certainly if you're in a space that you're not using air conditioning, you're for the most part leaving it either as a natural heat level or just using the heaters. You can just use a dehumidifier to grab that humidity out of the air, and you will find that you sweat a lot less in that scenario because you are actually still sweating the same amount. It's just that the water droplets are able to evaporate off of your body into the air.
Very good tips. Also, I'm noticing that the type of material that your mask is made of also makes a difference in terms of how hot or cool your face feels.
Yeah, it does. We in physiotherapy are mandated that we have to wear surgical masks. So no physiotherapist in Ontario is allowed to wear a cloth mask at this time. We have to wear the surgical masks. And they have the little metal clips so that you can clip down here on your face. We also, it's highly recommended, it's not mandated, but highly recommended that we wear eye protection. So if you're not going to wear a face shield, because that's a bit cumbersome when you're working with people sometimes, wearing the safety, like the goggles, is often what we're faced with. And so I understand all of you out there saying, my camera's fogging up, I can't see through my lens, I'm wearing glasses, this is a travesty, I can't see anything. And it's that hot air that's blowing up and causing that, you know, condensation kind of on the glasses and making them fog up. One of the things that we are using is the Kleenex trick that I'm sure many of you already know, where you roll the little Kleenex up and then you put it through the bridge of the nose. But those will slip down on your face if you are sweating. So that's where that humidity control trick is going to help you out a lot. If you can control that humidity, then you're not going to have a slippery surface on your face as much, and it will stay in place a lot better. It's something that we've noticed in clinic, is that prior to controlling for humidity, there was a lot more difficult, but you know, once we had that humidity under control, you're able to easily get that little piece of Kleenex to stay, and it doesn't get too moist or slip out of the way or anything. So
It does
also,
make a difference having that little wire piece around the nose, I find. Keeping it on as well as preventing your breath from going up and fogging anything up.
yes. So a lot of the cloth masks don't actually have that little metal clip inside. I recently ordered one from Vistaprint, made here in Ontario, surprisingly. And I think it retailed around $20 or $25 for the adult mask, but it does come with that built-in wire to form to your face. And they also sell filters that you can put inside of the mask. So it has a pocket in there that you can slide a filter inside of. So you can, you know, it's supposedly going to block more of the droplets. But you know, you don't have to purchase the filters. You can also use things like people have mentioned and we talked about before, the dried up, like, you know, dryer sheets if you want, but you know, chemicals. And baby wipes is another one if you leave them out to dry, or just throw them in your dryer. Again, if you don't care about your bills, then you know, you can use the dry baby wipe as a filter as well. But I've also heard coffee filters are useful. So you can use coffee filters as a filter inside of a mask if you're, you know, interested in that.
So it sounds like people need to find which material and type of mask would work best for them.
Yeah.
There should be something out there.
There's going to be something out
Yeah.
there, and you know, there are so many options now, because you walk into, even, you know, our Dean's now has a whole line online where you can look. There, I think they're prepping for the fall for those areas that are going to mandate masks for children, because they do have a whole adult line as well as a children's line. So even the major retailers, the clothing retailers, are now coming out with masks as accessory products. So there will be plenty of options, and you know, I understand that it's not cheap to invest in. Especially the surgical masks. Our surgical masks are almost $2 per mask that we use in clinic, and that's at clinic pricing. And so it's not cheap, but it does keep your client safe and yourself safe. So more so your clients safe. We wear masks to protect others. It's a courtesy for others. And so any benefit that you get using a mask in protecting yourself is a bonus. But as a client, I would very much appreciate mask wearing from my photographer, unless you're going to maintain at all times that social distance of 2 meters. In that case, it would be the same as, you know, outdoors, especially if you were outdoors, let's say doing an outdoor session with a client. My preference would still be to wear the mask, because from a standpoint of a liability aspect, I think it's better for your business in terms of, I'm not sure what would happen if somebody tried to contact trace and start a lawsuit. I'm sure there are protections in pandemic situations to protect businesses. However, I don't want that on my name as a business. I wouldn't want that to be, well, she didn't even wear a mask and now I've received this contact tracing that she was infected. And, I'd rather, if that were to be the case, that I was carrying for any reason or exposed to for any reason, COVID-19, that, then when I'm working with my clients, that I'm taking those precautions to keep them safe. And I think they would appreciate it as well.
Okay. And what about the glove issue? You're still feeling the same way about the gloves?
I still feel the same way about the gloves. Gloves are basically a mechanism to spread the virus. So whatever you touch, you're much less likely to sanitize your gloves than you are to sanitize your hands or partake in hand washing while wearing gloves. And so oftentimes they just end up being, these contaminated items that are then, and there's studies now that are showing that there's less risk of contracting COVID-19 from surfaces, that touching surfaces is less of a risk than they thought. It doesn't mean it's not a risk. So I still would not want to have COVID-19 on the gloves and then go and open a door and then it's on a doorknob. And, you're much more likely to wash your hands and so are your clients, or to use hand sanitizer when your hands are free and clear like this. You're much more likely to be aware of what you're touching. A lot of times when you wear gloves, there's the assumption, well, now I'm safe. And so you're not as careful with what it is that you are handling and touching and how many different things. And so I would still, I'm not using them. We don't use them in the clinic environment unless you are working directly with a patient that has confirmed COVID-19 or is symptomatic in one of the areas on the screen. But in our clinic, we don't even work with clients that are symptomatic because each business, I guess, will approach differently. Physios in a hospital environment can't turn away patients that are positive. And so those are the patients that you would be using full PPE, which includes gloves, but that's for use in a singular room with a singular patient. And you have to know how to put them on and take them off safely as well. So that's part of the training with glove use.
Okay. Let's do an update on studio sessions and what you would recommend people implement in regards to scheduling, cleaning, frequency of cleaning.
Right. So again, I'm going to go by the mandates of the regulated health field and just inform based on that, because I think that it should probably be pretty similar. And so, if you can, in the only difference being when you're in the regulated health field, the client is mandated to be wearing a mask at all times, from the moment they enter the clinic to the moment that they leave. Now, however, when you're working with clients that you're photographing in an indoor space, we're not mandating that they have to wear their masks necessarily throughout the session, or, the instances where they're actually being photographed, they probably won't be wearing a mask because you are photographing them either as a family or with their babies, and that's not the memory that they want. They're there to have their faces photographed, so they will be without masks. Now that will increase exposure in your environment. So in a clinic setting where everyone is masked at all times, we have to clean with industrial cleaners approved by the WHO, World Health Organization. And certainly you can go to their site and find those lists of the approved cleaners. But all contact surfaces that are frequent surfaces like doorknobs and light switches, etc., must be done twice daily and must be recorded. So there must be a physical paper that's recorded who did it at what time using what cleaner. And that's for all of those contact surfaces. In between clients, we have to clean absolutely everything and anything that anybody has touched, sat on, put their items down on. So we have cubby holes where they can put their purse, keys, etc., phone, and then the plinth that we're using for them to lay on. And we launder everything and anything that we use. So if we're using towels, we've now removed all pillows. We don't use pillows at all with our clients. We're only using the towels for their head. And so everything that they are touching or coming into contact with must be laundered at a high heat setting. And so, and then anything they touch gets wiped down with the industrial cleaner as well. So the areas that they maybe didn't necessarily touch are the ones that we do twice daily. So those are like light switches, doorknobs, etc. Some people will touch them, some people don't. They still need to be done twice daily. But for the purpose of anything that they do physically come in contact with and touch has to be cleaned immediately once they leave before we can see another client. Yeah.
Okay. So lots of cleaning.
Lots of cleaning.
Lots of cleaning. And Health Canada also has a list of recommended cleaners and disinfectants and hand sanitizers for the that are recommended to fight against COVID, or that are effective against COVID-19.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. So I think part of your other question was asking about how to time your sessions.
Yes.
And I would say the safest thing for you to do, especially since there are the masks aren't necessary for the client or not mandated for the client, would be to space out by a 24-hour period wherever possible, so that you're leaving that 24-hour gap between clients, just to reduce any transmission through the air, or you need the droplets essentially, so those do fall. They're not going to stay in your air forever. So it's not necessarily that that's an issue, but any surfaces, and to allow for cleaning. And definitely you're going to want to clean all of your fabrics, and those items that you can't clean, like for instance, we were talking previously about headbands that have dried flowers on them. Okay, this isn't something that you're going to want to wash or get wet or spray necessarily with. And we also want to be careful about what kind of chemicals we're going to expose our items to, because they are coming in contact with newborns who are so sensitive to chemicals. And so for those, I would suggest quarantining the items. So setting them aside, letting them, sit and wait for use again. So for myself, I sit things for a week at a time. I like to be extra cautious, guys. It just goes with my personality. So I will, when it comes to other people, I'm not so crazy. If you ever see me with my own kids, people will be like, oh, wow, she lets them like climb on things. And I'm not crazy that way. But when it comes to my business and how I'm treating others, I never want to be responsible for anything. So I let them sit for a week. It's probably overkill, but I think it's better than not. Anything like a bench that you can sanitize and wipe that down. So if you're using a prop like a stool or a bench or something, yes, wipe that, use that again as soon as the cleaner has dried. That's fine, as long as you've wiped every surface they may have possibly touched. But for fabric type of items, you're either going to need to wash them on a high heat setting, or you're going to need to set them aside if that's not possible, and let that ride out. So some people will tell you 24 hours is enough. That's great. I feel better with a week. So that's where my personal choice is on that one. But I would definitely recommend that you would approach in the same way, just quarantining items.
Yes. And I think somebody mentioned quarantining items, small items in Ziploc bags. And then for larger items, larger containers, maybe larger clear containers you could get from your local hardware store, Canadian Tire, that type of thing.
Yeah. You can use Tupperwares, whatever you want, really. As long as they're set aside and not somewhere where they're going to be, handled by anybody or.
Yes. Yes. And I think the same goes for if you are shooting on location and then coming back home, you could have a large bin set aside for your equipment if you want to quarantine it, or if you don't have time to sanitize everything at the moment, and you can it will be in a safe spot in your home, ready for you to clean when you have time to.
Yeah. And those alcohol wipes are perfectly safe for your camera.
Yes.
So you can be using those on your camera. to get into all the little divots and stuff that you've touched with your hands. And, we're sanitizing a lot. So again, the risk is lower with contact transmission from surfaces, but.
So talking about this 24 hours between a minimum, what is your opinion? I know we were going to talk about this later, but I'm going to do it now on mini sessions, because I've been noticing a lot of advertisements for mini sessions. I haven't seen any advertisements for indoor mini sessions, but there have been outdoor mini sessions being offered by photographers in our country. So what are your thoughts on those?
Yeah. So I try not to judge too harshly other people's choices for their business, because everybody has their reasoning for what they're choosing to do. For me personally, it wouldn't sit well to do that, because I know that contact tracing is part of management of this pandemic. And so the more contact that you have and the more places that you have been and the more people you've been exposed to, when you yourself test positive, that all has to be managed. And so, running mini sessions, that's going to be a lot more people that you're going to have to contact and tell that, okay, guys, you've been exposed and now you need to go and get tested. So whether or not you came within the social distance of them or not, that's going to be the recommendation, that they go and they get tested. And testing is not comfortable. It's not fun. So, I don't think that people will be happy to be inconvenienced, and I'd rather inconvenience fewer people than more. However, I understand that for business purposes, sometimes people's business models work for their business in terms of the mini sessions. I've never run on a mini session model myself, and I find that when I have done, the only time of year that I do, I don't call them mini sessions, I call them holiday card sessions, and they're specifically for the purpose of creating the holiday greeting card. There are ways in which you can make that profitable. However, I find that it tends to be a lot more work for me. I offer them as a courtesy for my clients. And as a marketing tool, because it does get, numerous copies of my work out to all of their contacts. And so for that purpose, I do run those holiday sessions. Now this year, I'm not quite sure that we'll do them. It will really depend on the state of things as we get further along into the fall. But for those of you that do run on these mini models, certainly outdoors will be less of a risk than indoors. Space between clients. So, in the physio clinic, typically we would see 2 to 3 people an hour based on, the model of which clinic you're working for. And so you're spending time with people in an overlap situation. And that's the regular model of how those clinics will be making their money. Now they have greater increased overhead because they have to buy all of these additional cleaning supplies that, we were using cleaning supplies previous, and then as well as PPE. So there's extra overhead for the physio businesses, and we're scheduling fewer clients, so there's less income. So every business is experiencing this. We are all hurting from this and dealing with it as best we can and as responsibly as we can. And so now in our situation, we're seeing less than 2 an hour in the clinic. So a client will come in for their clinic time, followed by a 15-minute period where we do nothing but clean and essentially deep clean every surface and area where they have been or touched or where we have been or touched, and then reset for the next client before that client comes in. This is also to ensure that we don't have overlap as people arrive and people leave. So it gives time for people to leave from their appointment prior to the arrival of the next client. And that's to reduce the amount of time and people in the space. And these are for clinics that they're a good amount of space in these clinics. We can manage more people than we do. Previously, there were 4 physiotherapists working at a time. And now there are 2 because there's an upstairs and a downstairs. And so we run on 15-minute off times such that every 15 minutes a client will be arriving to the clinic. And then they'll be leaving on the same kind of a schedule, but never in conjunction with each other. So that works really nicely. I think that if you are scheduling a mini session, I would not do them back to back. I would definitely take that time in between to ensure that you have time for one to leave, for everything to be deep cleaned before another arrives. And I would focus more on selling to the families that are attending the sessions than getting even more families to attend for an all-inclusive price. So one of the strategies that I've seen that works quite well for that is a limited number of files with an upsell if they'd like more files. And so, that's one of the strategies that you can use, but you can also bring in product sales. So I will always upsell my clients at the holiday card sessions with albums and canvases. And now, not everybody wants a themed canvas in their home, but one canvas in their home can be great. And sometimes I'm selling to a client from a previous year where it's, they realize how much they actually loved that flagship image that we got of their children, and that's going to be the big canvas now over the fireplace at Christmas time. So that's an option that you can do as well. You want to find ways that you can bring that income back without having to overwhelm yourself with the number of people that you're in contact with. So I think sales is a really underutilized strategy in our industry. Where a lot of us focus on all-inclusive models. This is sort of a solution for you that will work nicely in order to maximize your sale with each client. And, especially if you're running these mini models, a little bit from each equals a lot. So instead of bringing in more clients and exposing more people, you bring in each client at a greater value and you work less, but you make the same or more.
Yes. Well, I feel like this is a topic for a whole other interview.
100%.
Definitely. It's how to make more money shooting less.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would be everyone's.
That would be an interesting topic to explore here at APMPI. But going back to the mini sessions, so what I'm hearing is if you are doing them, try to minimize the overlap as you do in the clinic. So minimizing the overlap between clients, maybe that can be done by visiting that location first and just making sure you have all the logistics worked out so that you can communicate that to your clients before their shoot date. So you're going to come in through this west side and you're going to exit there, make sure they understand so that when it's the next client's turn, they're not meeting in the middle and not knowing where to go. And it won't be as chaotic on the day of your outdoor mini session when you have the logistics worked out.
Yeah, definitely. We always give instruction. So when I was using the studio space to do holiday card sessions, it's enter through the front, exit through the back. So there was always a flow and never an overlap of people. And that was prior to any pandemic. It just was the logistics of the flow since it's such a busy day. And it helps too to have a holding area for people that arrive earlier. So, they can wait in their cars. That's what we do in the clinic setting. Text when you get here, wait in your car.
Great idea. Yes.
So that works really well. And your suggestion of entering one way and exiting another, most parks have that option. And even though they've parked in a certain area, take a walk. Go and have a little, decompress before you put those kids right back into car seats.
So hopefully that's some good tips for those of you who are planning to run mini type sessions over the summer to take advantage of the weather. Okay, let's move on to paperwork. I think our advice still stands. This is something that you need to talk to your lawyer and accountant specifically about, especially regarding coronavirus waivers or screening checklists before each session. That's something that I've implemented. And
so we do actually we have to do passive and active screening, it's called. So passive screening being paper, like a form that you would give them. And so we have to have a form that they have completed, which is an online form. Even for physiotherapy, in our clinic, we use Jane, which is like a client management system, somewhat like Sprout. where you can send through a questionnaire form where they can fill out and put their, no for all of the screening questions. And you can find those online pretty easily, the screening questions that are necessary. But then we also have to actively screen when they arrive. So someone has to verbally ask, have you been exposed? And, have you traveled outside of the country or province, whatever it is for your area that you live in. So there are those, questions that you have to actively screen as well. And then we have to chart that so that it's, documented that those have been done. But it's not a bad idea to do the same for your photography business. So to get it on paper, virtual paper being better than actual paper that you're handing off to one another. But yeah, virtually having them fill out a form, and, it can be as easy as having a link that you can send them or text to them so that if they've not done it, when they arrive, you can just say, hey, I'm texting you the link right now, follow it through on your phone, and you can complete it right here in front of me. They'll complete it, you have it documented.
Yes.
Ready to go.
Yes. So those are definitely things to look into for your preparation before a session.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. To protect yourself. Okay. How about advice on shooting safely? So in a mini session, in a studio session, out any session really, to try to maintain the distance. I think many people are investing or turning to their longer lenses that may have been collecting some dust in their closets. that 70 to 200 or that 24 to 70 is
yeah, the compression on those longer lenses is so beautiful.
Yes.
I haven't been collecting dust because the results are just so wonderful when you do use them. So it's a beautiful thing to see people resorting to the longer lenses or investing in their business in longer lenses. And, of course, that is going to sort of promote that social distancing aspect. But one of the things that I would say to photographers, we can be control freaks, whereby every little piece has to be perfect. We have to have, everyone connected and touching, and all the hands have to be blah, 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 and, heads not lined up. And it can be, you need to practice verbal cueing. So I did take my daughter with some of her friends out. They're in our bubble, so our little, bubble of people that we're exposing to. And we went out for graduation and took some images. And it's really tempting to just, come on up in there and fix the hair. And just,
that straight hair is just a little tuck for them. Yes.
Yeah, it's so much faster, and just, what to do, and how to angle their head. You can just go in and be like, okay, boop, perfect. But you have to get good at verbal cueing. So staying that distance away from them, they're going to respect that a lot more too. So especially if you've indicated that you are going to be practicing social distancing, if you break that verbal contract, that agreement, sometimes people will sign up because they know that I can expect social distancing and I feel safe about that. And then if you now are moving into the space, you're taking that trust away. You're removing the trust from your business because you've told them one thing and you're doing another. So you have to get good at verbal cueing. And the one thing that I've learned very well, from studying dance, I was in professional dance training in my 20s, and then, learning kinesiology, which is the study of the movement of the body, and then moving on to physiotherapy, and now trying to prompt or cue people in exercise programming. So when they're doing their home exercise programming, and working with them in virtual appointments. Cueing is tough, and a lot of times we'll get frustrated and we'll say, move your, or whatever, turn to your right, turn this, and so you're saying, no, you need to turn to your right, and they're not doing it, and you're wondering what's so hard. You should know what your right side is. Like, how come you're not turning to your right? But in their mind, they're doing something else. So try to have several cues that mean the same thing. Okay. So you could say, tilt your head. I need you to tilt your head to the right. Right. And so they're not doing it. They're going, what am I doing? Like, they're moving their head all kinds of ways. Another cue that you could use is, I want you to take your right ear and bring it to your right shoulder. So move your right ear closer to your right shoulder. Okay, good. Do it less, do it more, right? So you need different ways to say the same thing, because if your verbal cue isn't working, it's not going to work just because you said it 20 more times.
Yes.
So you have to find a different way to give them a different reference point, right? So sometimes you might want them to turn a certain way, turn to the left. You could tell them, okay, do you see this tree beside me here? I want you to face this tree, like move to face this tree. Then they're going to do, then, okay, I know what that is. I know what that means, right? So sometimes that's what people need. They just need a visual cue, something to look at, look more towards
Yes.
that rock. Not that much,
Yes.
a little less than that. Okay, good.
Yes.
Give them those kinds of cues so that it helps them, right? Like sometimes you'll say, oh, your hair is just coming funny, like in front of your face. And they're going like, oh, what? And I'll say, okay, on your right-hand side, use your right hand. Now go touch your ear. They'll go to their ear. Okay, move forward from there. Great. Okay, that's it. Now tuck that piece. Okay, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
Yes.
you really have to get good at your cueing to help people do what it is
Yes.
you want them to do. And sometimes if you're like, move your hair off your shoulder, they're not doing it. I'll say, okay, take your right hand, grab the hair that's on the left shoulder, and sometimes using yourself as a mirror. So if I'm telling them use your right hand, I'll use my left.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now I'm opposite in the camera. But I'll say, use your right hand. I'm holding up my left. Now pick up the hair on your, left shoulder. It's my right shoulder, and throw that over. Okay.
I
So
find the mirroring really helps.
yeah, mirroring is great. It's
Personally,
a
I
strategy.
find myself doing the pose as I'm explaining it, and people just when they see someone do, they just naturally mirror it, even if you're not asking them to mirror, and you're just kind of doing it like, oh yeah, do this, and then they just end up mirroring you automatically. So
Yeah.
I'm sure many of us do that without knowing.
And I would say, for working with newborns, especially when you're trying to help them to handle their baby, don't go for the complicated poses. Like don't even, I wouldn't go there right now. Hold your baby natural. What comes naturally to you? And then
Right.
work from there.
Right. Oh, that isn't even something I had on my list to speak about. Yes. Instructing parents on how to wrap and hold their babies. Would it be beneficial to have a model baby, or, something like that, stand-in baby, just to show them a basic wrap?
Yeah, you don't even need a stand-in baby, really.
No.
Like you can use a stuffed animal. Honestly, I did
Yes.
a wrapping tutorial in the group, and I was using a Build-A-Bear. Build-A-Bear is a great bear to use. And this is something that you can send, if you video a little thing of yourself and put it on YouTube and make it a private video that anyone with the link can view, brand it for your business, and then send that to your client a couple weeks before their session. So they're still maybe even pregnant. And you can, say to them, okay, grab anything, grab a stuffed animal and, a cloth or I'll often tell them like, grab the scarves from H&M, right? Order a scarf. Here's a scarf, whatever. Order this one. I'll get them to order them off of H&M or off of, whichever vendors I like, and then have those arrive, and then they can practice with them so that they can get used to swaddling prior to having the baby. Because swaddling for the purpose of swaddling to settle a child is different than swaddling for photography purpose, right? So you want to teach them how to tuck the edges appropriately, and you want to teach them like your method of swaddling essentially.
Yes.
And letting them practice is great. And especially since, we don't see them typically until at least baby is 6, 7, 8 days old. So there's 6, 7, or 8 days where they can practice swaddling if they'd like at home with their baby in order to get a bit better before the session if they care. And if they don't do that work, then maybe it's not as important to them that everything is perfect and just so. I think part of this is in letting go of perfection. That's part of this pandemic. It's just letting go of your idea of perfection. And sometimes something beautiful is going to come out of that. So one of my favorite things to remember, for those of you, who are who've been in this industry a little bit longer, you'll remember, I'll say it that way. You'll remember way back, and it was likely around 2008, probably 2008-ish, 2009.
Over a decade ago.
Oh yeah. Over a decade ago.
Yeah,
Baby
okay.
as Art was huge. Baby as Art, Carrie and Britt. Britt still works now. under Little Bloom, and I think Carrie is working under Captured by Carrie. But the two of them were together. They were working together as Baby as Art.
I
And
remember them.
that, yeah. And really, truly, they were innovating the beginning of what we have now. So yes, Ann Geddes, yes, there have been those of Rachel Wood or whatever who've come prior, yes. But they were doing something different. They were using those earthy, natural materials and tones, and, you know, the beanbag with the handheld backdrop when no one could figure out, like, how are they doing that? How do they get this infinity kind of a look with the blanket? And they were literally hand holding it, you know, up from the beanbag. You know, they were innovating a lot of that stuff. And when I look at their work, and what's beautiful about their work is that it's not perfect. It's not perfect. It's not a formula. If you look at the bum up from that era and the different babies posed in the bum up, go into the archives of Baby as Art's blog that's probably still alive somewhere on the internet. It's beautiful because it's unique. The feet, the positioning, the, you know, the way that the babies were posed was not a formula. There was individuality in it, but still beauty. It was beautiful. And yes. I think that that's kind of become lacking in our industry. Now we have 1,000 courses that you can take and 1,000 online videos that you can reference. And, you know, all of these people that are teaching you how to make the perfect taco and how to do the perfect bum up. And that's great. I've done that too. You know, how to get those fingers perfectly flat and perfectly down by the, you know, 3 fingers showing, and how to tuck that foot just so in the back so you have only so much of the heel showing, and all of this. You know what? Go back and look at some of that other work, and that work is timeless and so beautiful, and wasn't perfect. And Geddes, who has struck a chord with so many.
Yes.
Now, there are safety issues there. I'm not going to say there aren't, but her work was never perfected. Babies were never made to be perfectly posed or perfectly positioned. So letting go of perfection is a gift, and it's an opportunity. And I think it's a possibility for all of us. It's hard. It's hard. You know,
it is hard. We're all learning. It's hard.
We want it. We want it so, and we critique the work too. When we put it out there, people critique it. And yeah, trying to get away from that. And, you know, we're trying to do that even with accreditation and image competition, to train the judges not to look for perfection in posing. That's not what it is. Yeah.
I think those are good words to end on, actually. Unless you have any other topics you'd like to explore in regards to safety in newborn photography. We didn't get any questions today, so.
I think in terms of the pandemic in general, you will want to have the waiver. So something that states, I recognize that in being here, there is a possibility that I may come into contact with COVID-19.
Yeah.
You know, you need that waiver, and you need to go to your local lawyer to have that reviewed to make sure that it is legitimate. But, you know, we'll help you out and put some base things, because it always does help if you have a framework to work from, to go and be approved by someone. It'll cost you less too. So we're working to put together a waiver for you. But policies and procedures for your studio are everything that we've talked about in the previous video and in this one. So this is how we're handling things. This is what we're doing in terms of timing. This is what we're doing in terms of cleaning in the environment. You know, stay away from all that UV light stuff that isn't going to be effective. Follow the WHO and the recommendations that are there specifically for COVID. Follow the evidence. And yeah, I think that's the best way to approach this, just to try to think of your client, think of how to be courteous to your clients, and think of how to protect your clients. And that's the most important thing.
I think as long as you are doing the best and the most that you can, I think there is not a strong likelihood of someone coming back and, you know, taking action against your business, for example, because you're able to say, I've done X, Y, Z, and all these other things.
And honestly, action doesn't mean lawsuit. It can even be a review or on your Facebook page, right? So you don't want the negative press, and neither do I. But But if you do your best, you're less likely to have it.
Exactly. And if you're transparent about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you, Stephanie, for joining me here and sharing your knowledge and expertise and little anecdotes. I definitely have to check out Baby as Art because they are one of the ones that inspired me
Yeah.
at the very beginning. And I didn't know that they were not, working together as one business anymore. So that's very interesting.
For a number of years, but Little
Yeah.
Bloom she's still actively working, and Britt is so wonderful. I love her work.
Okay. So thank you again. And thank you to the viewers for tuning in live. We have a handful of you. And for those of you tuning in later, you can still add your comments and questions, and Stephanie or someone from APNPI will respond and respond to your comment or questions.
Absolutely.
Yes. And we may check in again with Stephanie once things change, possibly again in a few weeks. So we'll see if, though that's the way 2020 is going. All right, so I'm going to turn off the live here and then I will say goodbye to Stephanie privately.
Sounds good.
So bye, everybody. Okay, if I can figure it out. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to stop recording.